Hey guys, what's going on today? In this video, we're going to be breaking down a Siege 12 similar to how I broke down my City of Threads the other day. This was also done, I believe, last week. But in this video, I kind of want to walk through every pull, or all the important pulls, our route when I'm using defensives. I'm not going to be spending time in every pull. I might skip around a bit just to save time, or if the pull doesn't really need anything to talk about, I'm not going to just waste your guys' time. So we're going to do this a little bit different. I've already done a full commentary on a Siege run. I think it was a Siege 10 or 11 a couple weeks ago, but this time I want to do 12 because it is a step up. We have the removal of the Xal'atath Kiss Crucifix and the introduction of the 10% increased health and damage on top of everything else. So we are running a Fury Warrior, Ret Paladin, Evoker, Holy Priest. Of course, I'm on the Brewmaster Monk. I believe in this video I am playing Master of Harmony. I don't think I'll talk about talents unless you guys want me to, but you'll have to let me know down in the comments and I'll do it for the next video. But the comp isn't super great. There's some complications with how Evoker works with Warrior and Paladin. They're also on the same CD. They both have minute and a half, so we have a minute and a half Evoker, but because they're not meta DPS, the Evoker loses a lot of value. So while we do have quote-unquote meta-ish specs in the group, it's not a meta comp at all, so we are going to have to do things a little bit differently. The first pull is going to be pretty large. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start by pulling these two gutters along with this Wave Shaper. We're going to get the kick on the Wave Shaper, and then we're going to go over to the Fountain and do this big pack all in one pull with Lust, and this is where we're going to see me rolling a lot of different CDs. So I'm going to open up with a Keg Smash, get the kick on the Wave Shaper. We are going to need to knock. My group is patiently waiting. I have both Dampen Harm as well as Weapons of Order rolling already. The first couple of Bone Claw, or whatever these are called, the little tooth bite things that come out from these gutters, they do a ton of damage. So that's why you want to roll your defensives nice and early. If you don't use Dampen Harm or Fortifying Brew or have an early Celestial Brew, you're probably going to die. So that's what I'm doing here. As you can see, I'm like sitting at half health even through GS, Weapons of Order, and Dampen Harm. But once this pull is nice and grouped up, the only thing you have to kick is the Wave Shaper, and your group is going to have a pretty easy time kind of blowing all this up. Now, we should have lusted this pull. We didn't, but that's okay. It would just be better for lust timings if we happened to use it on pull. This pull, once you get it all gathered, it's very tame, but the opening of the pull is very scary. So healer should be using a DR, you should be using most of your DRs. The next pull has a good bit of damage, but you're going to be fine for the next pull. And you can see that I'm starting to kind of ramp up my vitality for the next pull, so I have good sustained damage. Threat is kind of a big issue in this group, only because we have a Fury Warrior Ret with an empowered, like with the Invoker empowering them. I'm going to kick the Wave Shaper first. Now, this pull is weird. If you pull in the Raider too early, you can have the overlap with the frontal when he grips in. So what we're doing is we're waiting for the Raider to patrol back before we pull it. These gutters are going to die again. They do a ton of damage right at the start of the pull. So I actually ended up using a Celestial Brew with a Black Axe Brew reset. Now, our Warrior died here. I'm not sure why he died. I believe a bolt went through. Anyways, the Raider's now going to come in, which is going to be a nice overlap. So it's going to be the frontal first, and then it's going to be grip. And what my group is doing is you can line of sight the suck in. I think you can also outrange it technically, but I think it's like 40 or 45 yards. But you can also line of sight. So what they're going to do is they're going to stack up on orange to avoid that damage. And that's why I'm kind of taking them next to these, this like bags of potatoes or whatever Boralians have in their City of Boralus. Anyways, this pull's pretty tame. Kick Wave Shaper. The Waterlight Bolt's very scary. If it goes off, it puts a shield on an enemy. When it expires, when the buff expires off of the enemy, it stuns everyone within 8 yards. Now, there is a counterplay with, if you're paying attention to the debuff, you can simply just outrange it and then it won't stun anyone. But if you get stunned, you're probably going to die. So as long as you have one person assigned to that, it's pretty chill. Once the Enforcer and Raider are in and they're staggered, the rest of the pull is going to be pretty chill. I have a stop casting the Shattering Bellow interrupt spell casting. You just want to be careful. For the Brewmaster, Chi Burst is the thing that it'll interrupt you on. Or if you're like hard casting Vivify for some reason, just don't do that. Anyways, the next pull, as you can see, we actually ended up going down the stairs here. And we're going to, if I remember correctly, we skipped this pack. The reason why is because they made some percent changes early on in the season that you just don't need all the percent anymore. And we're going to be doing some skips with Mindtooth later on too. So we're going to be able to actually just skip this pack. Now, if you're doing Invis strats later, you can definitely do a big pull here, especially with Lust, and just blow up this pack. You would just focus the Wave Shaper and then the Enforcer. The Shredders do a little bit of group damage, but skipping them is a little bit better, I find. Anyways, we're going to keg smash, get these guys, get enough threat on them. Then we're going to roll in and we're going to be grabbing this pack. I'm going to ring them off to the left so they're away from that patrol. I don't want the patrol to come in. I think it has, I don't think it's a raider. I think it's just an enforcer, but we don't want it. No, it's a raider. You don't want it. So we got a pressing roar, then we do a leg sweep for 5 seconds. I'm only committing weapons of order here. I prefer to have my cooldowns for the next 2 pulls, so that's what I'm holding on to. You could definitely be a little bit more aggressive. I definitely could have used Fort Brew, especially for damage off of special delivery, but we're not, and I'm still holding on my trinket. And right now I'm spending this pull really banking up my vitality, since we just don't need it. I just don't need to use it on 2 mobs that are going to die soon. And I say that, and then I freaking just pop it. Never mind. I'm just dumb. So ideally what I would do here is I would have not Celestial Brood, save the Vitality for the next pull to do really big damage. Anyways, we're going to grab these Gutters. Gutters are scary. Just because they're not elites don't mean they don't hit you hard. So you want to respect these mobs. We're going to spend some time grouping them up. Now this goes a little weird. I'm trying to get threat on all of these. The Gutter ends up hitting our Priest. But threat's kind of just all over the place here. We're going to get gripped up top. Luckily we have our Paladin bubbled. This was my fault. I shouldn't have backpedaled. I should have jumped in, or I should have used Ox Statue with Provoke, but you can see here that there's just like Gutters all over the place. We're trying to recover. I think we do an okay job, but what ends up happening is that like now the Bomber's out and the Shaper's up here. We do get a kick, and I think we eventually knock it in maybe with a Ring of Peace. Good. But as you can see, I did use Dampen at the start of this pull. When the Gutters start hitting the tank, which again, they didn't really hit me here. They hit my friends. Just does a lot of damage. So I'm sitting on a pretty beefy Celestial Brew now when I feel like using it. I don't remember. I think I just send it on cooldown. The general rule of thumb is if the mobs are going to live long enough and you start storing up Vitality, just send Celestial Brew. It increases your damage. It does a lot of damage if you can store up your Vitality quickly. And Vitality is going to be stored quickly in bigger pulls. So I find that Master of Harmony is actually a very fun playstyle. Anyways, that pack goes down, then we're going to obviously clear the rest of the room. Priority here is Wave Shaper, as well as the Raider. The Raider does do a suck-in. You can line of sight in a few spots. I think there's some barrels over here. You can also, I believe, line of sight on this wall, though obviously the POV is a little weird there. Again, there's multiple Gutters. Be careful. I'm committing Fortifying Brew here. I'm not going to need cooldowns for boss. The boss is very chill for the tank. So we are committing some of our bigger cooldowns to this pull. I also have a Guardian Spirit on me, a very powerful cooldown as long as it doesn't proc. It's a 1 minute basically cooldown that increases all healing you receive by 60%. This double dips on Celestial Fortune. This makes Expel Harm extremely good. So playing with a Holy Priest has been pretty nice. I know in this key his stat weights aren't all that great, so hopefully in the future Mech's actually even able to feel even better in these keys, because he's been killing it lately. Anyways, this pull is going to go down and we're going to get into the boss fight. Now, the way that I like to start this boss, if I can try to find the start of this boss, I'm just going to, never mind, I end up going back to the same spot I was. So this boss does not focus the tank. The only thing you need to care about as a Brewmaster are these cleavers. Now, these cleavers have this thing called Heavy Slash, I believe, which is a big frontal. You don't want to aim it at your group. As you can see here, here comes the swirls. These always focus whoever their primary target is, which should be the tank. I don't want to aim it in his path. I see that Mech's running this way, so I want to aim the cleavers like away from him. You also don't really want to aim it at the boss. Luckily, we did get it there. If you can drag the cleavers on top, great. If not, the tank should just hold the cleavers off to the side of the room, face the frontals into the wall, so the rest of your group can just focus on killing powder shots and hitting the boss on these DRs. Another thing you can do is if you target the boss and you provoke him with the hasty provocation talent, it'll make him run faster, making it actually landing these bombs very easy. Ox Statue goes down here because I need to get threat on these. On the cleaver, I want to make sure I have threat. They spawn in all over the arena. You need to pay attention to them. Ideally, I think they spawn based on health percentage, but I could be wrong. At least they used to. They used to spawn every 20% of his health or every 15%. Just pay attention. I just like to look around every time he gets stunned. You can see that there's a powder shot. Actually, he's just standing there looking at my totem. He doesn't know what to do, which is kind of funny. He's just like walking back and forth. You can see him up here. Here comes another cleaver. I'm going to roll out and make sure I'm hitting him and getting threat and facing him away from the boss. You don't want these frontals going towards the boss. I don't know why our Paladin died there. Again, the Ox Statue, really big play there. The cleavers came right out. I'm able to AoE taunt them. And just, I'm facing them away from the boss so our group can kite. Our group's staying nice and far away from me. Brewmasters are pretty good at this. These guys don't do a ton of damage. Personally, I do struggle a little bit on my DH to stay alive here. These mobs kind of start wrecking my DH for some reason until there's enough of them where I can sustain my stealth. But you can even see, like, my group's mostly at a range. They're way over here. I just need to pay attention to this, the grip in. So here's 2 bombs here. Now, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I end up soaking one of them with the cleavers because we don't want these bombs to go off. You can soak them yourself, just pop a defensive, but you can also use them to stun and damage the mobs. So that's what I ended up doing there. I'm trying to get back in range. I noticed that our priest is a little bit out of range. I'm going to get gripped anyway, so it doesn't really matter. You just want to be a little careful. I want to try to save my cooldowns for the next couple pulls because the next couple pulls are really scary. Anyways, pretty clean fight. We did have a death there, so it's fine. A couple of shredders in this pull. You do need to be careful, and there's a couple curse blades. Curse blades, similar to gutters, they do a ton of tank damage, especially if you don't have a decurse. Every stack is 20% increased damage taken. That means melee attacks, any type of like little tank buster cast, these stinging seals, bolts, they will be lethal if you let this stay on. So I'm committing Fortifying Brew here. Diffuse Magic can be used, but it's not going to mitigate anything else because it's just a curse and it doesn't remove it, sadly. So we're just trying to use a lot of our defensives here. Fortifying Brew is going to fade, but I'm going to still have a charge of Celestial Brew. And by this time, the curses fade, the curse blades die, and now I'm going to feel pretty safe. When curse blades are here, or gutters are here, defensives, despite them not being elites. Anyways, let's skip forward a little bit. We're basically just holding W. We do the Commander Patrol, and then when it starts to get lower, we're going to chain into the next pull, which has, I believe, more curse blades. Kick the Waterlight Shell, interrupt the commander on Bolstering Shout. If you don't interrupt the commander, the mobs take less damage. It's not a big deal. You could technically do some line of sight stuff in here if you pull back to the house, but it's not. If you can live in the 12, it's not worth doing. If you can, or if you can't, it obviously is worth doing. Anyways, this next little part, let me fast forward a little bit. So right when the Raider dies, luckily, Brewmasters don't need a bop here, but it's nice to have one. If you roll dash, you can actually get here before they even start firing. The bop just makes it a little bit safer. I'm then going to pull in the Wave Shaper pack over here. You can see him coming in. Line of sighting on this pillar allows this mob to come in without requiring a kick. And the reason we pull this pack is because, well, one, we need the percent because with how the route is designed, but also when you don't pull this pack, the spotter runs into the pack, so you're going to pull it anyway. So might as well get it stacked up, get some extra cleave, allows people to use their CDs if they'd like to, and we can just blast. So our warrior, for example, is just going to start going ham with his Avatar, Rack, Bladestorm, etc. The spotter is out a little bit. It's hard to get this guy stacked up until you have like people with kicks here. Anyways, he's eventually coming in, and then we're going to be chilling. So let me fast forward a little bit. We're going to go across the boat. I'm going to grab these curse blades. We're going to need them for percent, but you do need to be careful here. Again, these curse blade debuffs make you take a ton of damage, so we want to be very careful here. My group accidentally pulled a little early. I'm rolling in with Dampen, and I can use Fortifying Brew. I don't remember if I use it here or if I save it for the next pack. But again, this curse, very scary. I'm at 5 stacks. I'm taking 100% more damage. I'm kiting. I am praying to God. I get a lay on hands from our paladin. The mobs eventually die. My debuff falls off. But while that's active, that's scary. So I did end up committing fort there as well, and then our priest went down. I don't know what he went down to. I think it was a combination of Azurite charge plus bolts on him. Yeah, that just finished him. Okay, cool. So we're waiting for him to res. I do need these last 2 curse blades. The reason I didn't pull all of them at the start was, well, I would have died if I pulled any more than I did. If you have a curse spell, you can definitely be very aggressive as long as that curse spell is actually going to dispel you. Anyways, we're going to fast forward a little bit. We go into the next pull right before boss. Here, you want to ideally target the commander and make sure you're kicking him. The spotter can be annoying, but just face the cannoneer away from your group. So I'm going to kind of position him at this tree, and you're going to see the giant broadside frontal come out. We just sidestep, kick, Bolstering Shout. Very tame. Towards the end of the pull, as you can see here, we're already on boss. The spotter, when it's sub 30%, starts running away. You can see that he is running right into the boss. We are healthy. We have plenty of mana. What I end up doing is I just say, fuck it. We roll in and we just send our cooldowns. This pull is not difficult anymore. The commander has 1 kick, a charge that we're already going to be spreading for, and then the spotter just doing some auxiliary kind of ground effects that we're just going to walk out of. Nothing too crazy here. You do want to chain pull kind of aggressively in this dungeon if you can, so this is a fine pull to do it once the cannoneer dies. Unfortunately, the overlap here is a little weird. You ideally do the two-step tango, where you have one circle drop, you stay in that circle until the second one appears, and then you can just sidestep, and then you stack two at a time, because the first one won't go off until the third one appears. So that's the way you would do that, and then obviously just dodge frontal. Outside of that, they really made this fight not too difficult. I don't think so. Like, you just need a little bit of spot healing from a healer. Most healers I've found don't struggle with this fight. It's only when you get hit by these additional mechanics that are avoidable. Intermission's going to start. I'm going to drop Ox at you so I can AoE taunt. There comes the AoE taunt. This allows me to have additional threat generation. When you're playing with classes with big fucking cooldowns like Nama is on the warrior, we just want to have precaution. Aim frontal at boat, pretty easy. And then, obviously, once the cannoneer dies, you're just going to shoot. So we're going to kind of repeat the same mechanics. Now, something interesting here, though, is you can CC these mobs on the boat. And you can, or you don't have to do this. It's just, it's something to minimize tank damage or group complex, like the complication of having additional mobs to get threat on. Some classes prefer having 3 targets because they might get funnel damage, like a Frost Mage, for example. So maybe you don't want to CC, but you can just leave them on the boat. They're going to just stay there. It's not going to bug out the fight. He's just going to sit in paralysis pretty much until the end of the encounter. Or what you can do is you can tag him later on if you have funnel as well. Once the CC breaks in the last phase, you can have him come in and just, have him just, I almost died there. So I popped a fuse and I was able to soak one of those swirls. So if you want to do that, you can. I definitely didn't need to, but I'm not using the defensives for anything else. Diffuse is very unique in this dungeon. It's not great. It's good at the start and it's good at the end, but it's not good in the middle of the dungeon. But this boss is very tame. Anyways, boss fight ends. We're now going up the hill to actually trigger and stop this. Now, we didn't have Bop, but with the Celestia Brew popped, I was able to just walk right up and stop that from happening. Now, this is what my group does. We like to do a big pull here. We have cooldowns coming up shortly anyways. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around the corner, pull the 3-pack at the bottom, pull the Giant Demolisher, pull these 3 guys here, then I'm going to transcend back. And the reason we do this is because it's so much easier. You have so much more space. There's like a wider arena to play with. You don't have trees over your head. It's a lot easier to dodge and see bananas when you're out in the open like this. It's not necessarily pulling back. Like, you're not wasting a lot of time pulling back because you're going to use Transcendence anyways. Plus, it groups up the mobs because everyone's line of sight. So look at how nicely these are stacked. We know what we're kicking. We're basically the Tempest. The star-marked ad is what we need to actually interrupt. He does a thing called Choking Waters. Now, if it targets most people, it's fine. But if it targets a caster or specifically your healer, you may wipe. Because it silences them for like 6 seconds. You can see it actually coming up here, 1 second. And we're going to kick. Easy. And that's pretty much how we do this pull. The Demolisher is ideally the target everyone should be targeting and cleaving off of, because all the rest of the stuff, it's just some kind of like tertiary damage that goes out, some group damage. Obviously, you have to dodge bananas. And then for the next pull, we're going to be pulling to the top of the hill where we're stopping the mobs here. Like, we're going to be pulling right. Oh, we're going to be pulling. Let's see. Did I do it yet? Okay, sorry, I'm like trying to figure out where I'm at. So we're going to be trying to fight right here, but I do want to talk about what I'm doing here. So what I'm doing is I'm actually using Crackling Jade Lightning on this pack. Now, it's very strange because if the packs are kind of between this tree here, you can't really see it, between this tree and like up the hill, they're going to snap. They can't recognize a path, so they're going to snap to your group. If they're a little bit further down, like where the Demolisher was here in a second, you'll see me. If I tag this Demolisher when he's here, they're going to go around the building, which is bad. Because it'll pull additional packs that we just can't handle because we don't have cooldowns, or every cooldown. Now, the weird thing about snapping, and I don't recommend this unless you're in a pre-made group, is that threat's obviously going to be all over the place. I can't hit these mobs currently, so I can't really do a lot to heal. Like, if you're like a Blood Death Knight, for example, you're kind of boned here. They're immune to Ring of Peace for some reason, so you have to kind of play this a little bit safer. I have Oxetchi down. I drop Ring of Peace for my group to be safe. And as soon as I'm able to get threat, we can start blowing CDs and we're kind of in the clear. In this pack, there's a couple of diseases that go in the tank. You ideally want to be able to dispel these. And then you have like Water Bolt, just kick it, Choking Waters. Our next pull after that, we're going to be going in front of the building. We do not want this Demolisher in our route. It's so much percent. It's a big meaty target. We don't have people who can do prio damage or great prio damage. So we're going to wait to pull this pack by itself and ignore this Demolisher. I hope we ignore the Demolisher here. Yeah, I think we're good. So we're just going to kick, and we're going to walk around the building, and we're going to also grab this Buccaneer that's hanging from the tree, and now we're going to fight on top of this next Demolisher. because we kind of have to pull this guy because he's kind of in our way. But these 5 on top of the Demolisher is pretty good. You can technically drag this Demolisher right here where I'm going now, and you can line of sight casts if needed. You can also line of sight the damage if needed. The only thing that's awkward is you have this tree in your way, and it's kind of hard to dodge the fear. Not a big deal, so we're going to fast forward a little bit more here. This pack's eventually going to go down, and now, because we have access to the Priest, we have access to Mind Soothe. And Mind Soothe is insanely powerful for this dungeon, because you don't need to use Shroud or like any kind of Invis. You can skip this pack. This pack is very annoying, does a lot of like just kind of weird tertiary auxiliary damage to your group. Your healer just has to kind of pump, the spotter runs away, the snipers can get spread out pretty easily. You just want to ignore it. There are some groups that sometimes we'll actually pull us into the next pack. We have plenty of time, so we're going to just play it safe. You can line of sight the Raider's grip if you're paying attention to it. You can actually dodge it right on this like little edge here, this little lip, so healers in range can avoid the damage as well as the suck in, which makes dodging Azerite Charge a little bit easier later on in the pull. But outside of that, like kick, bolstering, shout, just avoid the grip if you can, and that's pretty much it. And then once this pack dies, we're going to be chaining into the next pull. Now, the order you do this room really depends on yourself or your group. Maybe going left here with big CDs could be more efficient because the pull that's kind of to our left back behind us is just a larger pull, so it's going to be more efficient for CDs. But we're going to go into this pack next. We want to watch the Wave Shaper. I'm making sure my group is ready to come up with me, because if they're not, then we're just screwed. I could technically Shadow Meld this, but I don't want to do that because I might get my group killed. Ferocity is not you don't need to purge this if you don't have one. Like, it doesn't really matter that much. The big thing in this pack is that you're going to get the poison on you, which you definitely want to dispel, and then obviously the commander for the Azerite Charge. Outside of that, we're kind of just chilling. And then once this pull's pretty much dead, we can chain. So you're going to see me, I drop Ox at you. It eats the first couple autos from this group, so it can stagger it a little bit out because all mobs have different kind of spell swings or melee swings. And this pack has 1 invader. I believe the invader's applying poisons, I believe, or 2 invaders. Or no, 1 invader, 2 snipers. So the invader applies a poison to us. The snipers just shoot your group. It's pretty much just like you have to spot heal. You can see who it's targeting. It's 2 on Epi right here. They don't do too much damage, if I'm being honest. At least it's not throw flush from Necrotic Wake. Just dispel yourself when you can. I would say anything above 2 stacks is dangerous. If you're a player who is playing with the tank and you see them at 2 stacks or higher, try to dispel them if you have access to a poison dispel. Poison Cleansing Totem is obviously strong for this. You also have any kind of detox or cleanse from things like paladins, monks, what else? Nature's Cure from druids. Easy access. I've set up 4 stacks that I finally dispelled myself. We also have the Evoker and the Paladin can dispel me, so I'm not really too worried. They're all watching out for this kind of stuff. Anyways, going into this last pull, now you have 2 invaders, which are going to apply their dots much faster. The way that it works is they apply a buff to themselves, and then their successful melee swings apply the dots. So some tanks actually stack up a lot faster than a dodge-based tank like a Brewmaster. Anyways, I'm now at 5 stacks. I'm going to end up using a Slusher Brew as well as Dispel. Outside of that, it's pretty easy. Kick Commander, kick Wave Shaper on Shell. If you can stop bolts, great. If not, there's not a ton of tertiary damage onto your group here. This is a pretty tame pull. We're going to move on to Boss here. Boss, what I like to do is I like to pull him to this corner where we were just tanking. The idea is that you want to tank him on corners. And the reason we tank him on corners is because if you're on the corner, your melee will be on the boss. If the melee are on the boss, they're not baiting shitty pools where you need to stand to dodge waves. Now, obviously, my group is all very smart, so they all know where to stand regardless, but tanking them on the corner can control this. Now, dropping a pool here is fine because we still have room in front and behind, but we do want to be very careful. Now, I wonder if they're ever going to fix this boss. This frontal used to also spawn pools. It no longer does, which I think is really weird. But anyways, the pattern is just like dodge swirls, dodge frontal, dodge swirls, dodge frontal, dodge waves. Very easy. You all know how to do this fight. It's the third overlap that gets really scary. Now, in terms of cooldown usage, I'm generally going to just kind of use them when I feel like it. If I find that like we're doing some high movement, like where I have to go from this corner all the way over here, maybe I'll use a defensive so my healer doesn't have to heal me as much as this guy's autoing me in the back. I'll use Celestial Brew on cooldown mostly for damage on Master of Harmony, but outside of that, there's nothing really that I need to do. And if you can see here, we want to keep the water clear on these statues. So this wasn't a great bait, but we have room again away from the statue and next to the statue, just in case a wave happens to be coming from this direction next. Outside of that, we're going to just kind of fast forward through. Breakwater goes out, and then I move him to corner. Corner is going to be better for the next Breakwater, as well as the frontal to dodge. Tidal Surge is going to come out here. I'm trying to see, was this the overlap one? So right here, I know that there's going to be an overlap. So it queued his frontal, but he's doing waves because he hit 100 energy. So what I'm doing is I'm not going to aim him at the statue. I want to aim him away from the statue so my group is safe. This is probably the scariest overlap. What I see a lot of tanks do, and we kind of got lucky there with the positioning, is that a lot of people panic. And what happens when you panic is that you end up trying to go where your group's going and the frontal follows you. And then everyone has to move and often will panic and get hit by the wave because they're just not thinking. They're thinking, I got to dodge the frontal, and not that I have to stay out of line of sight of the wave. Now, either one's going to kill you, but you want to move to a safe spot or move into a brine pool and just pop a defensive. This fight is pretty tame. Anyways, once this boss goes down, you want roughly about 4.5 minutes. Like 4.5 is very tight. This boss does take a while, not because the fight itself requires a lot of damage, but it takes a while because you have to spend some time doing role playing in the fight to, to get the guy. He has to walk to the cannon, he has to repair the cannon, then you have to get in, you have to aim the cannon, then you have to shoot the cannon, then you have to move to the next platform. Right here, I'm going to jump, roll, dash, and it puts me above the Z axis so I can actually dodge the swirls, so I can make sure that my group can get down here safe. Anyways, 5.5 minutes is a perfect amount of time. We're going to have roughly a minute left. We're going to roll in. You're going to lust pull if you have it available. If not, you're going to lust when it comes up. We did hold lust for a while, so I think we should have actually had it later in the fight, but we're going to lust pull because what it's going to do is it's going to help the cadence of the fight later on. It's going to allow us to use some defensives early and give us a larger break window where then our defensives come back up for some of the other scarier overlaps, swirls, the slam, as well as debuffs. Range want to ideally be spread out. If you are ever a healer on this fight, don't dispel your evoker first. And the reason I say that, because oftentimes at the start of pull, the evoker is going to be buffing your group. And if you have people in melee and he's flying overhead and the dispel comes out and you dispel him and he's over the group, you're going to kill everyone. So you definitely want to be very active as a healer to see where everyone's at in the arena to make sure that they're not overlapping, especially dragons and especially melee. So we're going to spread out here. Our warrior standing back behind on this plank. It means he's not in the water, so he's not going to get eaten by a shark. Paladin is off to the left. I'm off to the right. Our healer is a little bit far. He probably is going to currently line himself on our other players, but he can stand up on this pillar. There's also a spot on this hill you can technically stand that'll never get targeted by swirls that you can also do if you have the time to climb up there. And our evoker staying a little bit out of melee because he is a melee, like a short range character, but he knows that melee is going to be crowded, so he's going to stay back a little bit between the healer and obviously the group. Now, one thing that's happening too, our healer is staying back so he can dispel our AUG, who is in the cannon shooting, and then he can life grip. I think he'll life grip him here, maybe? I can't really see. So he life grips our AUG, and then our AUG carries him across, so it allows them both to get here really quickly. This being on the tank is very chill. I don't have diffuse magic. You can diffuse it off, which is great. If not, just you're going to be tanky anyways. There's not a lot of tank damage due to this mob not really hitting all that hard anymore. And now we're on our second platform. Second platform is a little bit easier because there's no like weird line of sight shit that's happening with that like collapsed wall from the first platform. And the mobs are just like one in front, obviously, and one behind. It's just generally an easier platform to deal with. There's just more room to work with and no line of sight. The last platform is also pretty easy because you can avoid a lot of the swirls just by standing up on the stairs. And it's just a little weird with line of sight, but it's not a really big deal. Defensive usage on this fight, don't really need to use it. Roll them out as you need. When you run across away from your healer, maybe use diffuse magic, maybe use dampen harm. I like to save diffuse for first platform, and I like to use it on last platform. Just because, again, there are line of sight issues on both of those platforms compared to the second. Diffuse magic is also really good. If you happen to run across first and the debuff goes on you, Putrid Waters, you can just diffuse it right away, and then your healer only has to dispel the other person, and you're chilling. I did vivify our priest there just to make sure he was nice and healthy, and we're just focusing down this terror. Anyways, that mob eventually dies. I do want to talk about the transition, though, because at least back in BFA, there used to be an issue with the boss would melee someone. So right here, I'm going to diffuse. That gets rid of the Putrid Waters right away. We get a dispel. Perfect. So I'm going to stand here for a few seconds, and I'm going to make sure I'm taunting. I have provoke, and I'm doing some damage to pick off. Now, obviously, this damage is ineffective, but when I'm standing here, he's not going to melee my people who are walking across because I technically have threat, and then we're going to go over to the terror. Now, no one should go in melee range of the terror until the tank gets there because you'll die. But once we do, I'm going to basically try to inch my way out onto this platform, onto this little plank here. So my melee can go to either side and I can be here. So we have like this kind of 3-prong, or like we make a triangle. So whenever we need to dispel, we can dispel immediately without knocking each other back or having to spread out. So that's the strat here. If you have 4 melee, it's tough. Maybe you just send 1 on the back guy, but 3 melee is very, very doable for this key. The terror eventually goes down, or the demolishing terror, and then we go back to the gripping terror, and that is the end of the key. So right now the guy's repairing it. Our Aug Invoker is going to get in the cannon one last time, fire the shot, minute left. That boss fight ended up being, I think, just shy of 4 minutes, or 4.5 minutes, and that's the key. So yeah, Siege of Boralus is definitely one of the more challenging keys for a lot of reasons. You can't really have a lot of wipes. The thing is, if your run's clean, it's great, but if you wipe, the run backs from like first boss room to second boss is really long. The run from second boss to third boss room is really long if you happen to wipe. So as soon as you start having deaths, that's when the timer gets a little tight. And especially because the last boss has a little bit of RP in it, it's just challenging all around. Anyways, let me know if you guys have any questions down below. I'm definitely planning on doing the rest of my 12s and hopefully getting into 13s and 14s in the future. But yeah, let me know down below what you thought of this run, and if you have any questions, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.